Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay and hope you had a good Christmas. Now, 2023 reviews, are you bored of them yet? Well, some people seem to be going on for them for like days on end, isn't it? Like, will it never end? Well, you'll be glad to hear I'm going to do one, but only be the one. So this is going to be my top shoes by usage. So there'll be no sort of like opinions on here. This is actually based on stats. So first of all, let's have a quick look at the stats. Okay, so we wouldn't be doing this video without a spreadsheet. So I did 2,569 miles with 2 days to go. Now, as far as I can see, that's actually an all-time record for me. Not sure that's necessarily helping me go any faster, but I did do a 2:59 marathon in February, so that was something. But it's quite interesting here. I wore 46 different shoes this year, 36 different models. For 2023 shoes, I only did 839 miles out of the total, which is just under a third, and only in 10 shoes. So it does rather goes to show that I've been sort of like using my favourite shoes. And 2019 shoes there's mainly Vaporflies, but look how many 2021 shoes and 2022 shoes I've been using as well. So I'm not really sort of following the trends here at the moment, am I? Okay, we're going to count down the top 12 shoes that I've used this year by mileage. But first of all, we're going to a couple of duds. So these are contenders for bricks of the year. We've got the Prime X2 Strung here on the left as you're looking, and the Ultrafly on the right. Now these were both very expensive and very heavy, which doesn't really sort of like lend itself to a good shoe for me. These are getting on for 400 grams in my size, UK 13 in a Nike and the 13.5 in the Adidas one. So yeah, I think brick of the year, I think would have just edged it slightly to the Ultrafly, only in the fact it was like the most disappointing shoe for me. I was kind of expecting it to be a Vaporfly for the trails, and what we got was, well, supposedly a shoe to do 100-mile races in. But I think like that's going to be a use case of about sort of 500 people, isn't it, doing the Western States race. And look how wide these are compared to the Vaporflies. I've got narrow feet, and that base there is just so wide. I think I could sort of almost fit two of my heels in there. So needless to say, neither of these shoes made my top 12 used shoes this year. The Ultrafly was slightly higher at 40 miles, and I did 27 in the Prime X2 Strung. I was going to send both back, but I thought that's kind of poor form, really, having done a review of them. And look at, they're a bit muddy, aren't they? So yeah, well, maybe I'll get out in them again. I have sort of think, oh, maybe I will try the Prime X2 Strung again. Partly wasn't a great fit either, but anyway, let's not dwell on these ones too much longer. Okay, so in 12th place comes the Hoka Rocket X2. I did 91 miles in this shoe with a longest run of 11 miles. And I would say that this is the first Hoka shoe that I've actually liked. Certainly this is the most amount of miles I've run in a Hoka shoe. But maybe that's all you can commend it about. A lot of people saying, oh, this is the best Hoka shoe I've ever had, but not necessarily the best shoe that I've ever had. I think it's quite similar to a Vaporfly in a way, but the thing that sort of like put me off a bit, the fact it's only got like a 5mm drop. Now I like sort of at least a sort of an 8mm drop, up to 10 even. I think 8mm is probably a good number in a racing shoe, like a carbon fibre racing shoe. And I also felt when I wore these that although they were nice, then I did a shoe off where I definitely the Vaporfly 3 won in inverted commas. I definitely felt I was able to run slightly faster in them. But yeah, certainly a good shoe from Hoka. And in a way, for me, these make far more sense buying the real McCoy than, say, the Super Trainer. Because the Super Trainer in my size is a bit of a waste of time, because they're basically about 50 grams heavier than the real shoe. And if you're not actually going to use a shoe for racing in, then why would you get like the dumbed down version when you could just enjoy this one and have about 50 grams less on your feet? So yeah, that's in 12th place. Now in 11th place, in a way, is one of the most disappointing shoes for me. I know that I've seen already 4D and Ed Butter put this as their shoe of the year, and I was kind of thinking, if that's the shoe of the year, it's been a really terrible year for shoes, isn't it? You cannot come up with something better than this. I mean, it's okay, but it's just like, oh, it's just a lot of foam there, and that's kind of quite firm. It's nothing like the Bostons of old. I did so many miles in the Bostons of old, but this thing's about 50 grams heavier. A lot of people are a bit like the Hoka Rocket X2 saying, oh, it's a great shoe because it's better than the Boston 11 and Boston 10. Well, if you're only going to claim a shoe's better than its predecessor, is that really a contender for shoe of the year? So yeah, I did 91 miles in this with a highest mileage of 12. So yeah, I mean, it did a turn sort of, but every time I wore it, I was kind of thinking, oh, yeah, maybe I wish for a day that I could wear something else. Now in 10th place is the Adios 8, which I kind of feel is kind of a similar shoe to the Boston 12, but like a lot more sort of like fun, a lot more stripped back. And Adios used to be my sort of racing shoe for many years. The Adios 1 Boost was kind of my favourite one. And even though now I can finally get it in a 13.5, used to sort of squeeze into a 12.5 in the old days. This is kind of like a one that's sort of back to form for me. I've sort of rested this one a bit, and I've worn it again this week. I did like a up tempo run for about 8 miles in it the other day, and I just so much enjoyed it. I think just the fact it was quite a light shoe, no sort of fancy carbon plates. And I think the foam these days is just so much better than it used to be. I wore the old Adios one a couple of years ago, and deja vu. What's the saying? Things aren't often as good as they you remembered them. But yeah, certainly this shoe is like a good one. And the Adios 9 apparently is going to be sort of like apparently rumours are it's going to be like a stripped back sort of track racing type shoe. Which that's one problem with the Adios, that you can't legally use this in a track race because the stack's too high. But it does make it for a very nice road shoe. And for me, this is kind of perhaps what the Boston 12 is probably the same for everyone else. Perhaps it's just the fact it's just lighter. I mean, this is about 280 grams in my size, which makes it nice and light. And actually got this one up to 14 miles in the summer. I used to use it in the summer for like a sort of like an off-road, multi-terrain shoe. I mean, I think in those conditions it was great because a bit of road and then a bit of trail, and the outsole is not perhaps the obvious trail outsole, but in the summer when you just need to sort of get a shoe on your feet, and having slightly less stack means you always feel like you're more connected to the ground. So definitely one of my favourite shoes of the year. 101 miles altogether with the longest run of 14 miles. Now in ninth place here is probably my favourite non-Nike new racing shoe this year. This is the Saucony Endorphin Elite. I did 114 miles in it with a maximum mileage in any one run of 10 miles. I didn't really ever use it for a long run. I used it mainly sort of doing like workouts. I mean, I would say that it's not quite as I like it as much as the Vaporfly for me, but it's a shoe that initially I thought I wouldn't get. I thought it was just so expensive. I heard it was quite wide. I heard it was quite firm. I wondered if I was even good enough to run in it. And then the Elite was that really true Elite, not sort of like an aging sub-3 marathon runner here with sort of aspirations to get back to their 800-meter days. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I think I did notice when I was going out for the longer intervals that it was maybe starting to sort of not feel so comfortable towards the end of a session when I was warming down and having done some intervals. But yeah, in terms of like getting going and having a nice feel, I really enjoyed it. I mean, but I think some people put this as their shoe of the year, and I couldn't honestly say that, but certainly one that I'm definitely pleased to get. Now in 8th place is a bit of an interesting one. This is the ASICS Novablast 3. Now initially, if you remember my sort of initial reviews of it, I absolutely hated it. And this is perhaps the one shoe that perhaps has got better as I sort of persevered with it. I did 122 miles with it this year with a maximum mileage of only 9 miles. So it was a bit of a ploddy day shoe, which perhaps is the problem with it. Because every time I go out in it, I was thinking, I need to run slowly. And I never feel like it wants me to get going. I've got the Novablast 4 now as well, and I haven't really done a review yet because I'm still finding sort of like anything sort of different to say about the Novablast 4. I'm finding them very, very similar. And I even did a run the other day where I wore this one on one foot and the Novablast 4 on the other. I didn't really tell any difference, to be honest. I think the Novablast 4 was maybe a fraction softer, but I was really sort of like clutching at straws to tell what the difference was. So I'll do a review of the Novablast 4, but it may be the executive summary as well. If you like the Novablast 3, then get the Novablast 4 if you prefer the colour. I didn't really say there was much difference, but maybe again it's just the fact that in larger sizes they just sort of like don't scale as well. This is quite a big shoe for me, I find. Initially I thought this UK 13 was a bit too big. I even went to the point of getting the UK 12 and concluded that perhaps the ideal shoe for me was the one in the middle that didn't do. But yeah, certainly a shoe that if I want to just do a ploddy few easy miles, then I reach for this one. But yeah, not really a fun shoe, and really a shoe that just go for those days when you just sort of like feel you need to get out and put some miles in the bank, as it were. Now in 7th place here is the Vaporfly 3. Now if you've watched my channel a bit, you know that my Vaporflies are definitely my sort of favourite shoe. And this one was slightly disappointing initially because look to see how much I've had to manufacture the fit here. I've had to do a double knot and I've got this like bulge here because they're just so wide in the upper for me with a narrow foot. But having done so, it's not too bad. I didn't really use this for any long ones. I used it for quite a lot of 5k racing. I did 4 races in it, 3 5ks and a road mile. So 126 miles altogether with only a maximum long run of 9 miles, and I think that was just a long interval session. So yeah, the Vaporfly 3 is just slightly softer than the previous Vaporflies. I think they've just added 2 mils of extra stack to the Zoom X here, and they've in compensation they've just made the outsole a bit thinner. You might have seen some people's like heels have completely disappeared after a few runs. I don't think I really land on my heels much here, and then they're pretty much intact. In fact, you can still read the numbering here of all the different weights on the back. So yeah, certainly I must be someone that sort of like lands up here, not round here, because yeah, this is fine. Perhaps I didn't wear this one as much as I could do because I've only got one pair of this so far, and I was kind of hoping to sort of save it for races, but in the end I just sort of went out and wore it a bit. I'm not sort of so sure whether the Vaporfly 3 or the Vaporfly 1 is my favourite. I think I might still think that the Vaporfly 1 is my favourite if I really pushed now, but I may have to get another pair of this and sort of compare. But yeah, definitely my favourite sort of new racing shoe of the year. And obviously the Saucony Elite is the sort of the best of non-Nike one. So I'm definitely a bit of a Nike fanboy, I have to say. But you know, in racing shoes, I think they're very hard to beat. Maybe in daily trainers, not so good because not so many of them feature. But anyway, Vaporfly 3 in 7th place. Now in 6th place is actually a 2022 shoe, the Adios Pro 3. I did 137 miles in them this year with a maximum long run of 14 miles. I think for periods I was using these almost as a daily trainer. I took them to Portugal one time and did all my runs that week in them, including sort of like steady long runs. So I think in that sense it was a shoe that I felt was just a bit too heavy for an out-and-out racing shoe. I mean, I would say heavy relative terms. I mean, this is about 290, but I mean, you can definitely tell the difference between this and, say, the Vaporfly. That sort of 30 or 35 grams extra, and yeah, a lot of people's favourite shoe for racing, but I think a good shoe, and I've done some good sessions in it, but I always feel that I can actually go faster in other shoes like the Endorphin Elite or the Vaporflies, of course. But yeah, one that's definitely quite adaptable, especially for me. I find this as a good alternative just for the days when you put on a lighter shoe and just cruise out some steady miles. Now in 5th place is a shoe that actually dates from 2021. I've now had 4 pairs of these. I've recently bought a 4th pair off eBay, which I haven't actually used. This is my 3rd pair. So this year I did 152 miles in these with a maximum long run of 13 miles. So you can see like it's a shoe that is ideal when you want to put on a fairly light shoe and it's a bit wet outside, because you do keep yourself reasonably dry, and it's a shoe that if you sort of see like a bit of trail with a few puddles or whatever, you can sort of plough through and it's not too bad. It's not the best of grits, but it is mainly a road shoe. So the last few years, this is definitely the shoe that I've often been reaching for. So the fact it's still hanging in there in 5th place is a testament to it, and got one more new pair to come, as I say. So I'm sort of almost like a bit reluctant to crank them out. But I did find with these speeds that they do sort of like lose a bit of cushioning in the under the toes. But having said that, I'm not too bad on this one. But I think if I put a new pair on, you can tell the difference. Anyway, 5th place for the Speed 2 RunShield. Now, 4th place, the Pegasus 14. This might sort of annoy some shoe tubers who seem to like throw this sort of shoe at the wall in any sense of a Nike daily trainer, and almost like steam coming out of their ears. Well, actually, I managed to run 158 miles in this one with a maximum mileage in any run of 9 miles. So again, it was a bit of a classic sort of daily trainer. I didn't really ever want to take it out too long. But it's quite a versatile shoe. I remember doing sort of like quite a lot of lifting for Sue, where I was kind of like doing sort of run and walk effectively, just running between letterboxes essentially, sort of trying to get as many leaflets for her delivered as I could. I did do quite a lot of the normal running in it as well, I have to say. And it's a shoe that I bought so many versions of this year, because I got a pink pair for Sue, and they got 3 pairs for each of my 3 cousins. So I bought 5 different pairs this year, and then actually one for myself. It's definitely not the most sort of exciting of shoe, but that's kind of the whole point of a daily trainer, isn't it? Just put it on your feet, get it on and go. I do find the fact that it's sort of like not as squishy soft as some of the shoes quite helpful, because if you want to do a few strides at the end of a run, or just sort of like pick up the pace for a little bit, then you feel like you get a bit of response there, but you've got enough cushioning to get you for a run. And if you go out for an hour and your legs aren't going to be completely beat up the next day, and you kind of think, well, these days you can pick up this one in sales for well under 100 quid. So yeah, if you want a sort of fairly straightforward shoe, then go for this one. And I think another thing to bear in mind, this is Nike's sort of like 4th shoe by cost of their daily trainers. So in terms of like value, there's no point comparing this to, say, a Superblast when it's like under half the price. So now we come into the top 3. This is the Endorphin Speed 3, and I've actually got 2 pairs of these. This is the white pair, and I got like a lime green pair more recently. So I've done 180 miles between the 2 of them, and a longest run of 12 miles. So I wouldn't say that the 3 is quite as exciting to me as the Speed 2 RunShield. I always feel like I can get up and go bizarrely more in the Speed 2 RunShield than this one. This one always seems a bit dumbed down. You can see that they sort of widen it. You can see how close I've got the tongues there. It's not quite so bad, and the fact it had so much excess lacing, I had to chop the ends off. In fact, I think I probably chopped off too much of the lace there, and yeah, but it's a shoe that kind of, compared to say the Endorphin Speed 1 and 2, is a shoe that I'm not quite as like keen to wear every day, but clearly it's a shoe that I just look at my collection and think, oh, I want a fairly lightweight one. I want to go a bit up tempo today, or just a sort of a lightweight shoe to sort of cruise around in without too much effort. It's hard to beat, really, to be honest, and it's just so much lighter than say the Boston 12. So compared to the Boston 12 for me, this is just like so much more enjoyable. I feel like it's slightly softer feel, and you can definitely notice that difference in weight. So yeah, third place for the Endorphin Speed 3. Now the first and second place, you might think is a bit boring. This is the second place is the Vaporfly 2 here. Just today I started a brand new pair of the Vaporfly 2s, and I've actually used 3 different pairs this year. So I've mainly worn this one. In fact, this is the actual shoe that I've worn the most this year by quite a long way. 269 miles in this one, and 285 miles between the 3 pairs. This one is quite a handy one for the winter because it's nice and black. And yeah, it's a shoe that I did a maximum long run of 23 miles, one of my longest runs before Seville. So also the Vaporfly 2 was the shoe that I liked the least, but today I was wearing it, I was thinking, well, it's not too bad. It's just a bit heavier than the other two, but not by much. I'd say the upper fit is, I'm not say a lot, but it's definitely a wider fit than the Vaporfly 1. It doesn't quite hug your fit quite as well. So I've had to adapt the fit quite a lot by pulling it in. But the laces are these sort of jaggedy ones, and haven't needed to do a double lot or cut the laces. But yeah, Vaporfly 2, a real sort of like workhorse for me as a training shoe. I don't think I actually raced in it this year, but I have raced in it in the past. And in fact, I did my best race, apart from the 2:59 marathon, a 37-minute 10k at the Speedway 10k 2 years ago. Sadly, it's not been going on in January this year, so I won't be able to see if I can beat that. But yeah, definitely a shoe that I was pleased to get another pair of. I got another pair in the recent sales. I've got sort of 4th pair waiting in the wings. So 3 pairs out and about, and another one still to go. So first place as a shoe model is the Vaporfly 1. This is the exact pair I wore for my 2:59 marathon in Seville. So over 6 shoes. I'm still using 6 pairs. The only Vaporfly 1 I didn't use this year was the UK 12 that I've got. All the others are UK 13. So over the 6 shoes, this did 311 miles altogether, with a maximum long run being actually the Seville Marathon, so 26.2 miles in that. So yeah, it's just remarkable that I wouldn't make much of an influence, will I? Because crank out my sort of most used shoe model of the year, being a shoe that's 4 years old. I'd have to say that I think I'd have to give this as my favourite shoe in recent times. I'm not sure it's my favourite shoe ever, but certainly like in recent memory of the shoes that I still currently use. And it's actually testament to the shoes that I've got. I'm still using all 6 pairs. One of them I'll get out now, the white pair, is almost falling to bits, but I'm still using it now and again. Yeah, this is my white pair. I actually wore these in Seville in 2020, I think, when they were looking a lot newer. But they're still going. This one is actually better than the other one. I think the other one's starting to lose a bit of rubber on the side here. But yeah, you can see that the rubber's fully intact there. No particular problems there. The swoosh is kind of long since sort of like started to fall off. And I've got a bit of a hole there when when I got a thorn through it. But yeah, that's just a cosmetic issue. So yeah, if I would just want a shoe, perhaps a bit of muddy trails I need to sort of do a bit of, then this will be an ideal one. But yeah, so the Vaporfly 1, shoe of the year in terms of number of miles run across all my models. So let's have another look at some more stats. This is the breakdown by brand, and I actually only used 7 different brands this year, notably no New Balance, no On. I've never tried an On shoe. Now you can see actually that Nike is way ahead, isn't it, with 1,194 miles, pretty much half a mileage in Nike shoes, and 24 different shoes and 16 different models I wore this year. Some of the ones are definitely struggling with a bit, like the Ultrafly, the Vemera of 17 was a bit meh about, and quite a few shoes that I didn't wear too often. And I've just got 3 brands here with 1 shoe. The Hoka Rocket X2 did a bit of work in the Brooks Ghost 15. That was a bit of an effort, only 39 miles. And Puma, I can't even remember what, it might have been a few extra runs in the Velocity Nitro, but only 14 miles. Puma is sort of a company that I kind of like, I think I ought to try them, but they all seem to be like second best. People sort of saying, oh, the Deviating Nitro Elite is great, and then but it's a good for training and not good for racing. And I saw Confusi put his shoe of the year to the Deviate Nitro 2, the sort of like the regular train. I think again, if you put that as your shoe of the year, it's a pretty poor year for shoes, isn't it? I mean, like, there must be something wonderful about it. But yeah, ASICS is basically all the Novablasts. So it's a bit of a tie between Saucony and Adidas for the runners-up spot. Just over 500 miles in those. So yeah, it's looking like at the moment that Nike, Saucony, and Adidas are the three brands that are my go-tos. So ASICS don't really do any of their super shoes, inverted commas, in my size. Brooks, you kind of think, well, it's Brooks, isn't it? I mean, I didn't manage to get the Hyperion Max. Maybe that's a shoe that I perhaps would have liked to have tried, but maybe it's a bit late now. And it never seems to be on that good discount. If I saw one for about £100, I might go for it, but I don't really want to pay £160 for it, I don't think. And Hoka shoes, I just don't like the drop, really. And apart from the Rocket X2, nothing else really interests me to have a look at. This spreadsheet is a bit busy, but it's the 46 shoes I've actually worn this year. Different actual physical shoes. So the maximum is 269 in the Vaporfly 2, that black one. Second place was the white version of the Endorphin Speed 3, 159 miles. And third place, just by a mile, it might even jog the order depending on what shoes I wear the next 2 days, was the Pegasus 40 there. And then I also got past 150 miles in the Endorphin Speed 2 RunShield, the one I also showed up there. And actually I've got 9 different shoes to 100 miles this year, and then 91 in the Boston 12 and Rocket X2. In terms of what shoes I actually wore in races this year, I wore 4 different models: the Vaporfly 1, Dragonfly spikes on the track, Vaporfly 3, and the Endorphin Elite. So I did 9 races in the Vaporfly 1, which ranged from 5k road races to the Seville Marathon. There was also a half marathon in there. And I used 3 different models of Vaporfly 1. I used 2 of my Dragonflies. I've actually got 4 altogether. One's still in the box. 7 track races. Shortest one was a 400 meters up to a 5,000. That was also the model I used for my indoor 800 the other day. Vaporfly 3 used 4 times. I think the 5k I did in 1833 was my best 5k of the year by some way. And I also did a road mile in it at 5:37. So yeah, I wouldn't quite say that the Vaporfly 1 and Vaporfly 3, there's not much in it in terms of speed. In a way that the Vaporfly 3, just because it feels softer, maybe just sort of feels in your head that it's slightly slower. You just feel like you're sinking just very slightly. But clearly I was on it that day, and other days in the Vaporfly 1, obviously not so good. And I did 1 part run in the Endorphin Elite where I just broke 20 minutes. So that was on a nice warm September morning. It seems a long time ago now. But yeah, just to show that I don't always wear Nike shoes in a race. The only other shoe that non-Nike shoe that I've worn in recent years was the Endorphin Pro 3, which I did use a fair bit this year, but didn't quite make the top 12. And that one did okay. But again, it didn't sort of like think, oh, if I wear the Endorphin Elite, I'm suddenly going to run out of my skin. But I think, having said that, I don't think I would have done much better than the Vaporfly. So yeah, these days margins are pretty wafer thin, aren't they? So I hope you enjoyed that look at all the different shoes that I've worn this year. Which ones of these are amongst your favourites? What is the shoe that you think you've worn the most this year, and does it actually align with what you think is your favourite shoe? I think a lot of these reviews are very sort of like subjective in terms of what is my favourite, what is the best. But as you can see, I only actually used 10 2023 shoes this year, so it's very hard to say what is the best shoe of 2023 when you've only got 10 models. And that analysis I did of all the different shoe tubers, there was like 277 different shoes that they used this year, and some people are like heading around the 100 plus mark of shoes that they've actually tried this year. So yeah, I think in terms of like what is the most effective sort of analysis, I think actually miles on my feet is perhaps the best way of saying what was my favourite, because at the end of the day, you're not going to put a shoe on day after day, or at least every week, where you don't like it at all, do you? I tried a few shoes that perhaps I didn't really like much at all, just to sort of persevere with them. But yeah, at the end of the day, running is about enjoyment, isn't it? Not about suffering. So I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe on that, and see you next one then. Bye.